folks, we're back. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas for Veterans in Politics. Today we have Bronson Mack from the Southern Nevada Water District. He's the public outreach manager, and it's going to be an exciting show. And if you live in Southern Nevada, you're going to want to listen to this show because water affects everybody here, no matter how old you are, even your pets. So you want to listen to this show. If you don't care about human beings and you just care about animals, you still want to listen to this show. Jim, you have any rants?
Just real quick, thank you to Stephanie Phillips. She gave me a rant. So we finally shot down the spy balloon. Did you hear about that?
No.
China had a spy balloon, and it was just floating over the northern United States. And they were concerned about shooting it down because they weren't sure what was inside the balloon. They thought if they shot it down, like who knows what kind of hazardous material or whatever. But what cracks me up?
Hold on. How did a spy balloon get all the way from China to the United States over the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, whatever, and nobody saw it?
Yeah.
Is it like those squadron of Japanese pilots that came into Pearl Harbor and bombed everybody and nobody saw them coming until it was too late?
Yeah, I have no idea how it even got here without us knowing. It was actually, I think they shot it down like over Montana.
So what happened?
So, they shot it down, but I hear there's another one.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll shoot that down before it gets here.
You think?
Especially what's scary about it, too, is it was floating over the northern United States. And I don't know how many people realize this, but those are the northern United States. That's, except for one military base, those are the only bases we have in the continental United States with the ability to shoot ICBMs.
Oh, now you just told everybody.
Well,
now ISIS is listening.
I'm pretty sure if I know, the Chinese government, some other people know about it too. But yeah, that was just like shaking my head, like, come on, people, really?
Yeah. All right. That was it.
I guess we'll just blame it on the Air Force.
Yeah, they suck anyway, right?
All right. Yeah, I have nothing else.
All right. So we got Bronson Mack. Mr. Mack, could you tell us about... Oh, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here, talk a little bit about water.
Could you tell us a little bit about you?
Oh, sure. My name's Bronson Mack. Grew up here in Las Vegas.
Been here all your life?
Not all my life. Moved here in 1989. Went to Kenny Gwynn Junior High, Clark High School, graduate from UNLV. Okay. Had the opportunity to do a little study abroad in Costa Rica, learn a little bit of Spanish, kind of expand my knowledge and appreciation for living in the United States as a result of that, and started working for the Southern Nevada Water Authority as an intern while at UNLV, and 21 years later, I am the manager of our public information department, which ultimately means we're responsible for our external communications.
So you know everything there is to know about water?
Well, not everything that there is to know, but I know quite a good deal about what goes on here in Southern Nevada, what it takes to manage our region's water resources, protect it, conserve it, and can answer any questions that you have with regards to that.
Well, what's the difference between Southern Nevada Water Authority and Las Vegas Valley Water?
Good question. Las Vegas Valley Water District. Yeah. So the Southern Nevada Water Authority was created in 1991, and it was created out of a need. Prior to 1991, you had the Las Vegas Valley Water District, the City of Henderson, North Las Vegas, Boulder City, as well as the Big Bend Water District down in Laughlin. They all had their own individual contracts for Colorado River water. And they were all accessing that water directly from Lake Mead through what was called the Southern Nevada Water System. Now, the Southern Nevada Water System was created and developed by the federal government back in the 1960s, and it's 1971 when they first bring in Colorado River water for municipal purposes. Prior to that, everything was just groundwater. But there was still, prior to 1991, some unallocated Colorado River water that was available for Nevada, and Henderson wanted it. And the Las Vegas Valley Water District wanted it. And North Las Vegas wanted it. So the federal government, Bureau of Reclamation, said, look, Nevada, you need to get your house in order, and you really need to come and speak with us in one voice and help us understand where you want these last remaining water rights allocated. So those municipal water providers and jurisdictions got together. And through a long negotiation process, the Las Vegas Valley Water District put its water rights in the bucket in the middle of the room. So did Henderson, so did North Las Vegas, so did the Big Bend Water District in Boulder City. And through that, they formed the Southern Nevada Water Authority. And the Southern Nevada Water Authority was tasked with managing the region's entire water resources on behalf of the region. You see, if one community got water over another community, they would have now a competitive advantage over that other community. And also at that time, you had North Las Vegas, you had City of Henderson, Las Vegas Valley Water District, trying to show that they needed this additional water supply, because water supply meant growth, meant economic development. And there are stories, in fact, about some of these municipalities literally turning on fire hydrants and letting water run into the middle of the desert in order to show an increase in their water demands, therefore justification for needing this additional water. So these municipal water providers form SNWA, and rather than create a whole other bureaucratic level of governance for our water supply, the agencies decide that they are all going to be members of the Water Authority, and they delegate the Las Vegas Valley Water District every single year to serve as the managing agent for SNWA. And so that allows us to now have shared resources between the Las Vegas Valley Water District and the Southern Nevada Water Authority. Somebody like me, somebody like the HR department, the finance department. You know, there's a lot of the engineering groups. You know, that way you don't have duplication of efforts amongst two different water agencies. And so since 1991, SNWA has managed the regional water for Southern Nevada, treats that water coming out of Lake Mead, delivers that water to all of its member agencies, Henderson, North Las Vegas Valley Water District. What's also interesting about SNWA is we brought in the wastewater agencies as well, because Southern Nevada is one of, if not the only community in the United States that recycles water to the level that we do here. The only other community that we're aware of in the entire world that recycles water like Las Vegas does is Singapore. And so we capture all of our indoor water use, treat it to clean water standards, return it back to Lake Mead through the Las Vegas wash. Every gallon we return to Lake Mead allows us to take another gallon out. This is how Southern Nevada stretches its water supply. Through community
water comes from the toilet.
You flush it, goes down the drain,
so
you brushed your
comes
teeth
from the
with
toilet.
it.
You guys recycle it, and we drink it.
That water gets treated to clean water standards through extensive wastewater treatment. And the wastewater agencies here have made such significant investment in being able to treat that water to such a high level that absolutely it is safely returned back to the environment through the Las Vegas wash. Now, the wash is also a wetlands. And the wetlands there in the wash polish that water a little bit further before it makes its way to Lake Mead. Now, keep this in mind. When the reclaimed water returns back to Lake Mead, it goes into Lake Mead at a much warmer temperature. And so that is water that is primarily on the surface of Lake Mead. Our community has invested $1.5 billion in a deep water intake and a low lake level pumping station over the past 10 years. And we draw our water from the bottom of Lake Mead. So we draw cooler, cleaner water from the bottom of Lake Mead, bring that through our state-of-the-art water treatment facility, utilizing ozonation, chlorination, and multi-phased filtration processes in order to make sure that that water meets the Safe Drinking Water Act standards so that it is safe for all of us to be able to consume it. And then we deliver that throughout the valley. So our indoor water use, just like you said, yeah, anything that goes down the drain, including the toilet, it's a closed loop system. And that is what allows us to live off the smallest slice of the Colorado River, extend our community's water supply, and ensure reliable water resources going forward. The only way we consume water in Southern Nevada is three ways. One, and the biggest one, outdoor irrigation. If it's green and it's growing in this valley, it's being irrigated, because barely anything grows here all on its own, unless it's a creosote bush and maybe the occasional mesquite tree. Otherwise, it's being irrigated by our drinking water supply. The second largest consumer of water, evaporative cooling. Any large building, university, high school, high rise, casino. They all utilize evaporative cooling to cool their indoor spaces, right? So it's not exactly air conditioning by technical definition, but that is the way in which we cool the indoor spaces, is literally by consuming water and moving hot water through that cool water to cool that air down and then cool those indoor spaces. And the third way that we consume water is anybody who is on a septic system. If you're on a septic system, that is water that enters onto your property and never gets returned back to the municipal system. So those are really our three areas of target. So you're on septic, right? So septic right now, any water that is coming into your property is just going directly into your septic system. The expectation is that, and we are working on developing a conversion program that will help property owners convert from septic systems onto the municipal water system. It's another way in which we can extend our water supply.
Because right now it costs about $25,000 to change it over.
To do it on your own, if you have to do it on your own.
Yeah.
So yeah, over time and as our wastewater systems and infrastructure expand out, especially to those areas like in the northwest part of the valley or other areas in the southwest, where the development happened kind of on a case-by-case basis, right? Like ranch-style properties, 3-lot cul-de-sacs, homes that were on groundwater. A lot of them had septic because there isn't any or wasn't any municipal sewer infrastructure for them to connect to. But we are changing that, and it's just another way in which our community is continuing to increase its water efficiency.
So, Mr. Mack, if Lake Mead is where Southern Nevada gets their water from, why do we have all these sea-doos and boats and water activity on top of that water?
That is a great question, right? Lake Mead is like a 250 square mile body of water.
Yeah, and it keeps dropping down and down and down and down and down.
And all that water that is in Lake Mead is fed by the Colorado River. There's 7 states that share the Colorado River.
What are these states?
It is in the upper basin, it's Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico.
Okay.
In the lower basin, which would be down below Glen Canyon Dam or Lake Powell.
Say the states again.
Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, and New Mexico.
New Mexico.
They're all in the upper basin. No, they're in the lower basin.
They're in the lower
All right, let's hear the lower basin.
So in the lower basin, we've got Nevada, Arizona, and California, as well as the country of Mexico.
Why are we giving Mexico water?
Because the Colorado River originates here in the United States, but it has always and historically flowed all the way down to the Sea of Cortez. So Mexico has had access to that water supply since,
Do they
time
have rights
immemorial.
to it?
Absolutely. The country of Mexico has rights to the Colorado River under the 1944 treaty with the United States. So it's an international treaty between the United States and Mexico that allots Mexico 1.5 million acre feet of water. We get 300,000 here in Las Vegas. But a good chunk of that water that is used in Mexico is used to support Mexico's agricultural industry.
I was going to go a little bit political on you, Mr. Mack. I was going to say, tell them to stop their illegal flow of immigrants across the border, or are we going to stop the water supply?
Yeah, that's one for the feds to go ahead and take a look at. But when it comes to water resources and when it comes to the management and sharing of the Colorado River, Mexico has been an outstanding partner. I mean, when you consider the fact that Arizona, California, and Nevada have all agreed to various criteria to reduce water use, Mexico's been right there in line with Arizona and with Nevada in taking shortages and making contributions under the drought contingency plan. So Mexico's been a great partner on the river for sure.
See, a lot of people don't know Mexico feeds off of the Colorado River.
Yeah.
That includes the Lake Mead as well?
That's correct. So the water that is in Lake Mead is serving Arizona, it's serving California, it's serving us here in Las Vegas, and then the country of Mexico. Those are really the 4 primary water users of water in Lake Mead. And again, us here in Las Vegas, even though it's in our backyard, we use the smallest amount of Colorado River water.
So that's what I wanted to ask you just real quick, because so I'm confused on contracts. When is that ever going to come up again? You said the 1944 treaty.
1944 treaty with
That
Mexico?
one just deals with Mexico, but how about, because when I was looking up percentages, I'm just curious of why the contract works the way it does with the amount of water that California and Arizona get compared to us.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at a stat, and since 2002, the valley has grown roughly by 700,000 residents.
Correct.
But at the same time, we've cut our water usage by 26%.
Yeah, we've actually even cut it by 30% when we compared to last year's numbers. So you're absolutely right.
How come we could do that in California? Can't?
that's my
Great question. So,
well, you didn't even. I don't think you answered my other question. Why do we have recreational vehicles on top of the?
So why do we have recreational vehicles on Lake Mead? Lake Mead does provide a recreational element. It is part of the National Park Service system.
But if we have a drought, shouldn't we discontinue that?
Lake Mead brings in, I believe it is close to $6 billion into our local economy here. So some of it is economics associated with it. It provides recreational activity, as does the vast majority of open bodies of water that are throughout the United States for boating, for skiing, for wakeboarding, for fishing. You know, all of those kinds of amenities generally go hand in hand with open bodies of water like lakes.
But is it a choice between making the dollar or saving the human population from extermination here in Las Vegas because of lack of water?
Well, I don't think there's necessarily a conflict between recreational water uses at Lake Mead and our drinking water supply. Keep in mind that more water evaporates from Lake Mead in 1 year than Southern Nevada uses in an entire year. There's more than 400,000 acre feet of water that evaporates from Lake Mead every single year. And we only consume, 224,000 acre feet last year.
But it keeps going down and down and down.
So why does it keep going down and down and down?
Bodies keep rising up and up and up and up.
So the reason that we have been seeing water level declines within Lake Mead is due to low snowpack in the Colorado Rockies, because that's where our water supply originates. That low snowpack has also been exacerbated by more arid and drier conditions since the turn of the century. And those more arid, drier conditions have dried out the soils so that when we do get a good snowpack year and it runs off into the Colorado River, before it gets there, the environment soaks that up first like a sponge, right? The dry soils are going to take that water first before it makes its way into the Colorado River. When we look at what the flows of the Colorado River have been since the turn of the century, we have had 5 years of above average flows. That's 17 years of below average flows.
And what was that question before I interrupted with the recreational you were about to answer?
He was going to ask me about the 1922 Colorado River Compact and how come that hasn't been renegotiated.
Yeah, because because I was looking up other stuff and it says, and I do understand a lot of this goes to agriculture, but it was confusing to me that the Imperial County in California only has 180,000 residents.
Yep.
And uses 80% of the 58% allotment that California gets.
So when you look back and you look at the history of the Colorado River, it was divided up in 1922. That's when the Colorado River Compact was identified. Now, those who were doing those negotiations and doing those evaluations and divvying up that water amongst these 7 states ultimately were doing so at a time period where it was historically wet. And they anticipated that there was more than 15 million acre feet of Colorado River flows available to be divided amongst the states. They gave 7.5 million to those 4 upper basin states. They gave 7.5 million to those lower basin states. The primary justification for why each state got its allocation centered on agriculture. 100 years ago, what was here in Las Vegas?
Right.
Not a whole heck of a lot. But agriculture was definitely ongoing down in Southern California, as well as in portions of Arizona, and then in the upper basin as well. So the Colorado River is divided up based on agriculture originally. And now since that time, we have seen municipalities, we've seen communities grow, we've seen communities begin to use that river water. And so with that, we haven't seen a change in those state allocations. And there is no expectation you are going to see a change in those state allocations. For Nevada to get more water, that means there's another state that has to give up some water. Now, that 15 million acre feet that those forefathers on 1922 on the Colorado River had divided up, Yeah, that was a very, very wet period. And what we have actually seen, hydraulically speaking, over these past 20 years is something closer to 12 to 14 million acre feet of water, 12 million acre feet of water. And even more so to that point, when you look at the climate projections and what could possibly occur as we see a warmer and drier future, is we could see flows as low as 11 million acre feet. And that's what our organization has been planning for. Worst case scenario, and this is why we emphasize water conservation, because water conservation is our number one, number two, and number three resource for this community.
If we could take sewer water that has feces in there and convert it into drinking water, why can't we do the same with ocean water?
Great question. And the answer to that is we can, right? Desalination.
How come California is not doing that? There's a lot of ocean there.
So California has definite, right? We don't have coastline here, right? So it makes it a little hard for us to do it on our own.
Too, right?
Makes it a little tough for us. Right. But California definitely has embarked on desalination. They do have a handful of desalination plants. There's one that is down in San Diego called Poseidon. That desalination plant produces water to the tune, and very similar to what most desalination plants are producing water to the tune of anywhere from about $2,000 to $3,000 per acre foot. Right now, Colorado River water is running about $200, $250 an acre foot. So it becomes very expensive water first and foremost. But the California Coastal Commission has just recently rejected applications for large-scale desalination in Southern California and within the Orange County area. They have concerns with regards to impacts to marine life, concerns with the brine disposal after you actually produce that desalinated water. Now, what we have done is we have engaged with Arizona and with the country of Mexico, and we have begun to put a process in place and at least get the agreements in place that would allow for exchanges to occur on the river, whereby we here in Southern Nevada and our partners in Arizona would be making an investment with Mexico in building a desalination plant in Mexico. That water would be used locally by Mexicans that need that water. And then Arizona and California would be able to take a like amount of water in exchange for Mexico's allocation. So we wouldn't pipe and pump desalinated water from the coast to Las Vegas. What we would do would be to enter into a partnership and then exchange that water.
Isn't 75% of the earth made up of water?
Yeah, vast majority of it's salty though, right?
Exactly.
So you need to have desalination.
We could never run out of that.
You need to have desalination. No. And it's very energy intensive, but we can always produce more power, right? Mm-hmm. And as of right now, really the only way to produce more water is through things like desalination. Now, do we think desalination is going to be part of our water future? Absolutely. Do we know when that is going to occur? Not quite yet. But we have at least put the agreements in place and the mechanisms, more importantly, in place that would allow for that kind of partnership to happen. 20 years ago, you weren't permitted to do that kind of thing on the Colorado River. Where we are now, we would be able to.
So construction is booming here.
All over the place, right? It's all over the Colorado River basin.
What? How much water would it take to build a 2-story house, 3,000 square foot?
Okay.
How much water would it take to build one of those?
So when we look at growth and development here in Southern Nevada, obviously water becomes a concern. And this is why over the past 20 years, we have worked to update our development codes so that homes built today and commercial properties built today are more water efficient than those that already exist. Southern Nevada Home Builders Association, in conjunction with Applied Analysis, did some research just recently based on some of these changes that we have made to development codes as a community. And these development code changes don't just affect Henderson, they don't just affect North Las Vegas, they don't just affect Clark County. Every single municipality has adopted those same codes again. So we've got some good parity throughout the valley. And homes built today are using 50% less water than homes that were built 20, 30 years ago. And especially when we take a look and consider that indoor water use, negligible impact, right? Because what happens to the indoor water?
Gets recycled.
Gets recycled back to Lake Mead, right? That extends our water supply. It's that outdoor water that we only get to use once. So we have prohibited grass in front yards as of 2003, 2004. We also prohibited grass in any new commercial developments that were being constructed during that time. We've taken that now a step further to say there's no grass in backyards for new development anymore. There are other ground coverings that can work and serve as a functional use in your backyard that are not going to be more as water intensive as grass. You need to keep in mind, grass uses 73 gallons of water per square foot per year to survive in this valley. 73 gallons of water on a single square foot of grass is a column of water 10 feet tall. That's the height of an NBA basketball hoop. That is how much water gets applied to every plot of grass you see throughout southern Nevada, whether it's in the middle of a median or a roundabout, or it's lining the grocery store parking lot, or it's a front yard or a backyard. 10 feet of water.
Then why do we allow golf courses to exist then?
So drip irrigation uses less than 3 feet of water. So why do we allow golf courses to exist? So golf courses were one of the very first industries to come on board in our water conservation programs. Aside from targeting the development community to try and get development to be more water efficient, we had to take care of some of the existing stuff. And we had over 50 golf courses, right, back in the early 2000s that needed to really come down with their water use. We put all of those golf courses on a water budget back in 2004. They were allowed 6.3 acre feet, so they can put 6 feet of water on every acre of irrigated land. I just told you grass requires 10 feet of water. So we were allowing them 6 feet of water. So that forced the golf course industry to make decisions about prioritizing where they wanted to place their limited water supply that they were being budgeted so that they could maximize the use of that water. And what golf courses did was they began taking out grass outside of the playing areas. They took grass outside of the fairways. They took away the grass off of the greens. They took the grass from around the tee boxes, the grass around the clubhouse. That way they could minimize their consumption of water use on grass that wasn't associated with the playing area. Golf courses have removed the equivalent of 9 professional-sized golf courses without actually losing a single golf course. So golf courses became more efficient by getting rid of the grass that wasn't part of the playing area. And next year, golf course water budgets go from 6 acre feet per irrigated acre, it's going down to 4. So they're ratcheting down on their water use even further. And there is a prohibition on any new golf courses being built in southern Nevada.
I want to get back to the construction. Is that going to slow down? Is that going to stop? Is any company that building roads like the Transportation Authority or any private home builders, or they ration how much water they can use? Because before they in an empty lot, they always put water down to cut down on the dust, right?
Absolutely.
And in my area, up in the Centennial Hill area, they're just building it
like crazy.
Because that's Ward 6, and that's the only ward in the city of Las Vegas that actually have anywhere you could build, because everything else is built. Right? Am I correct on that one?
Well, there's still obviously open areas of land and infill that needs to happen, but there have been efforts at looking at expanding that boundary. Look, when it comes to growth here in southern Nevada, we have all benefited from the growth that we have experienced here. If you have purchased a home that was built after 2003, that home was built because of the water that was saved by this community. You have to keep in mind that in 2002, when this drought really began to intensify, our water use was 325,000 acre feet. We were using more than we were allotted on the Colorado River. We implemented these conservation measures in the early 2000s and immediately began to reverse the trend and drive down our water use. So water conservation, and again, I told you, last year we used 224,000 acre feet. That's 100,000 acre foot difference over 2 decades. That is 1/3 of our total water supply that we have reduced, and it's all been because of water conservation. Yet at the same time, just as you indicated, Jim, 750,000 new people have moved to this valley during that same time. So we've shown we can grow our economy, we can diversify our economy, and we can do so by using less water. Let me put just a finer point on that. In the past 3 years, we had 42,000 new water service connections to the municipal water systems in this valley. 42,000 new connections over the past 3 years. But our water use decreased by 12% during that same 3-year time period. We are growing with a zero water footprint, a negative water footprint. And we are doing that because of water conservation. And again, we benefit from the economic activity that this community has. If you've got a kid that is graduating from UNLV, you want them to get gainful employment. You want them to be able to have the same quality of life that you have had here in Southern Nevada and be able to buy a home. You know, that's a key part of protecting our community's investment. So the number one way you can continue to protect your investment, water conservation, that's the fulcrum on which we balance water supplies and demands.
I wanted to pause just a quick second because just for viewers and listeners, when Steve's asking questions and I'm asking questions, like, can you explain to the viewers and listeners what the heck is an acre foot of water?
Yeah, you bet.
Because I'm kind of a geek with numbers too, so I just wanted to pause for a minute. And so when you're throwing out acre feet of water,
what does that look like?
What does it look like? So people know exactly what the heck you're talking about.
Jim, I appreciate that because sometimes I'll get into a little bit of the jargon there. So a single acre foot of water is enough water to cover an acre of land 1 foot deep. So think of a football field with 1 foot of water on it. That is an acre foot. We get 300,000 of those from Lake Mead that we can consume. That's what we can use. Now, prior to our implementation of all of these conservation measures in the early 2000s, 1 acre foot of water was enough for 2 Las Vegas homes for a year. When we started implementing our conservation measures, just doesn't matter. Just 2 residential homes.
How many bedrooms?
It really doesn't matter because, again, we're talking about indoor water use here. That indoor water use gets recycled and reclaimed. It doesn't count against our consumption of Colorado River water. So an acre foot was about 2 homes. As we implemented our conservation measures, we started to see that an acre foot was getting close to like, wow, 2 homes for a year and a half. Wow, now 3 homes capable of being able to be supported by an acre foot. When we look just at new construction of residential homes, an acre foot of water is enough to support up to 5 new homes here in Southern Nevada. So our homes have become more water efficient over time. And we've also gone back in time with our existing homes, retrofitting those primarily through our Water Smart Landscape Rebate Program, $3 a square foot. Get rid of that grass in your front yard that you don't ever play on, that you don't kick a soccer ball on, that is just sitting there drinking your water supply, increasing your water bill, and is being drowned by 10 feet of water every single year, and replace that with something that is drip irrigated, that has trees so that you've got shade. Can you imagine this community without shade? We need the shade. And drip irrigated plants, especially flowering plants. I mean, yeah, it sounds kind of silly, flowering plants, but you know who really appreciates that? The bees and the hummingbirds and the butterflies, the pollinators that are part of our overall ecosystem here in Southern Nevada. So the other thing to keep in mind is grass, aside from being extremely water intensive, it takes a lot to maintain it. You got to mow it, right? You got to blow it.
My whole life taking care of grass.
Is there anything that you hate more than mowing grass, Jim?
I was never so happy the day you guys offered that rebate, and I just let the yard die.
And so when you think about how much water it takes to move that water, treated drinking water, from Lake Mead to that plot of grass, that 10 feet of water that gets applied to it, that maintenance that is associated with pushing that lawnmower and that blower and everything else, you know, that has air quality implications for us on the negative side. Whereas if we can get trees and plants installed, they do a much better job helping to clean the air for the community.
When you said that you represent the Southern Nevada Water Authority, what cities, what municipalities are in there? Because, you know, there's Mount Charleston, there's Logandale, there's Laughlin, there's Good Springs, there's Jean. I mean, where does it go?
Okay, great question.
I hear just Henderson, North Las Vegas.
Yep.
I didn't hear Boulder City. I didn't hear Creech. I didn't hear, I don't hear any of those.
So let's talk about this.
How big is the Southern Nevada Water Authority?
So the Southern Nevada Water Authority provides water to 2.3 million people. So it's this valley. right here, which is North Las Vegas, Clark County,
Clark County
City
goes
of
all the
Las
way up
Vegas,
to Laughlin.
City of Las Vegas, yep.
Okay.
As well as Henderson.
Okay.
Now, it's the Las Vegas Valley Water District that serves Clark County and unincorporated Clark County and the City of Las Vegas. Okay, so that's this in Valley, everybody in Valley here. Blue Diamond, just outside of our valley, they've got their own groundwater rights that they utilize in order to support that small community, and that is operated by the Las Vegas Valley Water District. Kyle Canyon, up on Mount Charleston, again, a small system. That system is owned by Clark County, but it is operated by the Las Vegas Valley Water District. They have their own groundwater rights that they use to serve those communities of Rainbow and some of the other subdivisions that are up there. And then Laughlin, which is obviously on the river downstream of Davis Dam. Laughlin is a member of the Southern Nevada Water Authority. It is served by the Big Bend Water District, again, owned by Clark County, and used to be operated by the Clark County Water Reclamation District. Water Reclamation District handles wastewater. And it was in the mid-2000s when the Las Vegas Valley Water District then assumed operation for the Big Bend Water District. And then, of course, Boulder City. So the Southern Nevada Water Authority and the Colorado River water that it provides is this valley, Boulder City, and Laughlin. That's who uses Colorado River water.
What about Pahrump, Nye County?
Pahrump and Nye County, all groundwater, all operated by a separate entity, not a member of the Southern Nevada Water Authority, does not use any Colorado River water, solely groundwater.
Do you guys take the snow cap from Mount Charleston and turn that into drinking water?
You know, that snow that we get in Mount Charleston does certainly absorb down into the aquifer, and so it does, depending on which part of the mountain you're looking at. Yes, we do benefit from that, helping to recharge our local aquifer. 10% of this valley's water supply comes from that local aquifer, as well as those who have private groundwater rights or domestic wells.
That was my next question. Are they in jeopardy? Because it seems like, sorry, Mr. Mack, because I have, we're on well. We have 3 homes on well, and they said that we go down about 3 football fields into the ground. And we have water for over 100 years. So I'm not really worried about where I live, you know. But the state likes to get involved and like to know what your meter reading and all that good stuff. So
they have jurisdiction over your groundwater rights.
We put a gate around it. Anyways, so they have to like call me up.
There's a surprise.
And there's a wrought iron gate around there. And see the look on his face?
Sure. That's actually good.
He's a wild man.
You're protecting your infrastructure.
Why they have rights? You know, that's a good question. Why do they have rights? Because our well collapsed a year ago. And between the 3 homes, we put over $21,000 to fix that.
Yeah.
I didn't see the state come and say, oh, you know, we'll pay for it. Why do they have rights when they're not throwing any money to fix it?
Ultimately, the state of Nevada has jurisdiction over groundwater rights. Groundwater is a state resource.
Then why don't they fix it? Why am I spending my money to fix that collapsed well?
Because that is your infrastructure that you need to manage, and that ultimately you need to build the access to that water supply.
Then if I'm
so it's your responsibility for that.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah,
I don't mind the responsibility. If I have the responsibility and I have to put the money into it, why does the state have any rights over it?
They have jurisdiction, again, over groundwater. So your rights that you have, and I don't know what kind of
their property.
I don't know what kind of rights you have, but ultimately the rights that you utilize for your groundwater well are adjudicated or are provided and overseen by the Nevada Division of Water Resources, which is a state entity.
But does that make, it doesn't make any sense to me. And here's the reason why, Mr. Mack. Because if my property sits on that water and I own that property and I'm paying property tax, and if that well goes bad, I have to be the one that fixes it, not the state. How could they have any rights?
Again, it depends. It depends on what kind of water rights you have. Maybe you may have temporary revocable water rights. You might have domestic water rights. Water rights that you didn't go out there on the open market and pay for. I don't necessarily know your particular situation. But for the vast majority...
There's different water rights.
Oh, absolutely. And for the vast majority of people that have groundwater wells, especially out in the Northwest, they have a domestic well. The state allowed them to drill a well and allowed them up to 2 acre-feet per home, I believe it is, that utilizes that well. But should that well fail, and that well and property are within 180 feet of a municipal water line, they would be forced to connect to the municipal water system. And those water rights would then be turned over or relinquished back to the state. We have a program in place that helps to offset that cost so that well owners can make that connection. But again, it depends on what kind of water rights you have. You have to keep in mind, prior to 1971 and Las Vegas bringing and tapping Colorado River water, groundwater was our sole source of water. And that was all part of having this community grow, having this community develop, accommodating people as they move to this community. So the state was issuing domestic well permits that allowed people to drill wells so they had the water that was necessary. But they paid for that infrastructure in order to access that water that was being permitted to them by the state of Nevada. Then, right around the 1960s, we saw an over-appropriation of this entire valley. In other words, we had more demand on the groundwater system than the groundwater system was able to support. And we saw subsidence. Groundwater levels declined significantly. Go to the Springs Preserve. There's 2 key geologic features at the Springs Preserve. One is a subsidence area where you can see an original well derrick and well infrastructure that dropped well over 8 feet vertically because of the over-appropriation and over-pumping of groundwater. The second geologic feature there is a spring mound. That gets really nerdy, but really cool that the upward pressure of groundwater created this spring mound. So with that over-appropriation of groundwater and with the declining water levels happening in the 1960s and in the 1970s, everybody was like, if this community is going to continue to see growth and development and become whatever it is it wants to become when it grows up, we need to begin accessing Nevada's Colorado River water resources and reduce our reliance on the groundwater supply. And since that time, we have done a lot to manage. This is where the Southern Nevada Water Authority comes in and helps the state manage this entire groundwater basin, this valley. If you think of the Las Vegas Valley, it's like a bowl. So it is its own groundwater basin. And the precipitation that happens here percolates down, helps to recharge that basin. Well, we also, as the Southern Nevada Water Authority, help to recharge that basin, and we pump Colorado River water, unused Colorado River water as part of Nevada's allocation into that aquifer. That helped bring aquifer levels up to a point that it allowed recovery of that aquifer, protected access to those who already had groundwater rights and were using that groundwater, and it gave us a place where we could store and bank our water supply. We've got more than a year's worth of municipal water stored within our aquifer here in Las Vegas. We also have water stored in California and in Arizona and water stored in Lake Mead. It's more than 8 years of reserves that we have stored for our future use.
I wanted to bring that up because I've heard that before. Now, I didn't know about the other states, but when I keep hearing that we're actually banking water.
Banking water, yeah.
In Lake Mead, I'm like, okay. And when Steve and I were talking yesterday, I was kind of half-heartedly joking. I'm like, well, if you're banking water, how do you protect that bank?
Yep.
Let's not to say it, California or Arizona just takes it. Fine, we can sue them if we want to sue them for taking our water, but once the water is gone, it's gone.
So there are agreements, and those agreements are backed by the Bureau of Reclamation, the United States federal government.
Yeah.
And those agreements outline what the rules are and the permissibility in allowing water to be banked and stored in Lake Mead. Yeah. And there's an entire accounting process that is associated with that. So it's outlined within agreements, all in agreement between those states that are all banking that water so that they can access it. And Mexico is a party to that too. Mexico is banking water in Lake Mead. Keep in mind that all of the water that we're banking in Lake Mead is helping keep lake levels up. And that was critical for us, especially prior to our ability to be able to access water through intake number 3. because we have 2 intakes in Lake Mead, one installed in 1971, one installed in the early 2000s. And both of those intakes are at specific elevations within the lake. And as the lake level declined, there was certainly the potential that those 2 pieces of infrastructure to provide 90% of our water supply were going to be above the water line. That makes them inoperable. This is why our community invested $1.5 billion in an engineering marvel known as Intake Number 3, a 3-mile-long tunnel underneath Lake Mead. We have an outstanding documentary, 30 minutes. Yeah, and you will be amazed at what it takes to get that infrastructure installed. And then the low lake level pumping station. Well, the low lake level pumping station allows us the ability to pump the full elevation of Lake Mead, which we never had before. And in April of last year, Lake Mead fell below elevations that made our highest intake, intake number 1, which sat at elevation 1050, it's sitting above the water line today. So we lost half of our capacity to bring water into this valley in April of this year, and we were able to make that seamless transition to the low lake level pumping station, and that there protected our community's access to its primary water supply.
I'm sure you know how much construction is going on around the valley, right?
Sure.
On roads and building. What's the ballpark, do you think, that's active construction right now?
You know, it varies. I mean, you're seeing
Ballpark.
Everything from you're seeing a mix. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars. We're talking billions of dollars worth of development taking place, whether that's the Durango station or whether that's a new subdivision or a 4-lot cul-de-sac. You know, regardless of what the construction and development is here in Southern Nevada, it is about conservation and minimizing our consumption through evaporative cooling and outdoor water use.
Do we have enough water to sustain that? And how long is Lake Mead going to dry up? We're going to put a little housing development there?
Well, there already was one prior to Lake Mead known as St. Thomas.
Really?
Yeah, St. Thomas, which was, if you've gone Logandale, Overton, if you were to keep on going on toward Lake Mead, there was a community there, Mormon settlement known as St. Thomas. When they filled Lake Mead, the community of St. Thomas had to be evacuated. They had to be relocated, obviously, and they all ended up underwater. But, you know, it was about 10 years ago.
So there were homes there?
There was a community that was there, yeah.
Right where the dam is?
Not where the dam is. Think about on the Logandale, Overton side.
Okay.
So kind of more on that northern side of Hoover Dam, or of Lake Mead. Yeah. And actually 10 years ago, as Lake Mead's water level started to decline, you started to see remnants of St. Thomas. But look, as our community has grown, as we have seen economic development take place here, whether it's residential or whether it's commercial, it is about minimizing the consumptive water use. And this is why we have made significant changes to development codes. Remember, homes that are built today already are using the highest efficiency water fixtures, even though we recycle that indoor water anyway and has no impact on our water supply.
Are we ever going to run out of water here? How long do we have?
You know, are we ever going to run out of water here in Southern Nevada?
People are still coming. They're still coming.
They're still coming.
I mean, we had a percentage during COVID. People left.
Yep.
But now they're coming back in droves, especially from California. They're just coming like crazy. So how in 10 years, what do you see the population becoming here in Southern Nevada? Well, and sorry, Mr. Mack, I'll lose my train of thought if I don't get it all out. And how much water do we have to last here? What's years? How long do we have?
So we put together a 50-year water resource plan every single year. And with that 50-year resource plan, we get population projections from UNLV's Center for Business and Economic Research. We take that population projection over the 50-year planning horizon. We even layer on an additional 10 and then 15% increase in population based on what they are projecting. And then we also layer on what our water demands are going to be as a result of that population increase. At the end of this 50-year time frame, you're looking at anywhere from 3.5 to a little over 4 million people that could be here in Southern Nevada. Now take that a step further and layer on water conservation. Our community has set a goal of 86 gallons per person per day by 2035. Last year, we used 104 gallons per person per day. So we are making a trend, and this is compared to 20 years ago when we were well over 200 gallons per person per day, a much smaller population than we have today. So we are making that push and showing that trend line of reducing our per person water use, and we demonstrate that within our resource plan that if we achieve our goal of 86 gallons per person per day, that we can continue to support a growing population over the next 50 years with the limited water supply that we have. But we are working to expand that water supply as well. A partnership with Los Angeles is underway. Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, they take all of their treated wastewater right now and they just discharge it out to the Pacific Ocean. A good share of it. Some of it gets recycled for purple pipe and irrigation uses.
Purple what?
Purple pipe?
What's that?
That's when you take treated wastewater and then you repurpose it for irrigation, right? So you send it through an entirely different water infrastructure system in order to deliver it to be for irrigation water. Well, California, and Southern California in particular, is going to make a $3 billion investment to improve their wastewater treatment processes, construct the infrastructure to move that water, because all of those wastewater plants are on the coast, move that water from the coast across Los Angeles and inject now that highly treated wastewater into the aquifer at the San Gabriel Mountains. We're partnering in this program. We're making an investment in this large-scale water recycling program, and we get a share of that water. But rather than pipe and pump it from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, which becomes costly and cost prohibitive, we're going to exchange it for a share of California's water at Lake Mead that we're going to access directly from intake number 3 in the low lake level pumping station.
Will that help alleviate some of the, because like I brought up earlier, will a lot of that water go help feed the Imperial County in California?
No.
As far as its irrigation?
No, not necessarily, because Los Angeles and the metropolitan area is separate from Imperial. So that reuse program that they have is a way in which to bolster the Metropolitan Water District, which serves Santa Barbara all the way down to San Diego.
So it's basically going to be used for urban use then?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And very similar to what we already do here in Southern Nevada. But the key difference here is that us being a partner within that, helping them have the funding to construct it and in turn getting a share of that water. That helps us to expand our water supply. Now, at some point in the future, to your question, at some point in the future, it depends on what water demands look like and how we stay on our conservation journey, and if we achieve our 86 gallons per person per day. But certainly there are scenarios out there where sometime around the 2040 to 2060 timeframe, we either need to begin tapping some of our temporary water supplies, that 8 years that we have stored in reserve, or bringing on additional water resources for this community.
Well, I had heard something else. Sorry, Steve, I'll leave it at this. I apologize. I had heard a rumor that they were, once Lake Mead dropped to a certain level, that they just shut the dam off and no more water would go downstream.
So
is there actually, because I've heard all kinds of stuff before too, that they were going to let Lake Powell go, but then I was told they can't because it charges the CPUs for the Western Region Power Grid or something.
You've kind of just hit on like the current event right now, what's going on the river. Yeah. So there are two things, right? Hoover Dam, which creates Lake Mead, Glen Canyon Dam, which creates Lake Powell upstream. Water release from Glen Canyon Dam travels through the Grand Canyon and eventually makes its way into Lake Mead. Both of those dams generate power and are critical infrastructure for the Western Power Grid. Lake Powell's water levels are extremely low. They are so low that the Bureau of Reclamation, Department of the Interior, under the United States federal government, held back nearly 500,000 acre-feet. More water than we consume, actually twice the amount of water than we consumed last year. They held water back in Lake Powell to keep water levels up so they can keep producing that hydropower that is critical to the Western Power Grid. But to your point, there is a point at which, at both Lake Powell as well as Lake Mead, where water levels can decline to a point where water can no longer produce power, number one, and then if they decline even further, no water can then pass through those dams themselves to meet downstream water demands. We're dependent upon water getting through Glen Canyon Dam. That's water that's coming down to Lake Powell.
Right.
And Arizona, California, and Mexico are dependent upon water getting through Hoover Dam to meet their downstream water demands. We're fortunate that we're upstream of Hoover Dam here, and the infrastructure that we have installed, $1.5 billion, intake number 3 in that low lake level pumping station, give us access to our water supply below that dead pool elevation you're referencing. It's elevation 900 in Lake Mead, or if we want to get technical, it's 895, but let's round it up. It's elevation 900.
Oh, well, there's still a ways to go then, because the elevation's what, about 1440 right now?
1045.
1045, sorry.
1045. But it's been bouncing around. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been bouncing around, and it depends on what the downstream water demands are. It depends on what the hydrology is on the river and how much water we're getting in snowpack that is making its way into the river system.
All right. Sorry. You have any more questions?
No, actually, I don't.
Okay.
Sorry for geeking out, but I've been watching YouTube
Great
videos
questions.
all night long getting ready for this.
I have one last one. The agricultural irrigation, does that utilize 70% of the water in Southern Nevada, and also is personal use 17%?
Okay, so agricultural water use throughout the entire Colorado River system is anywhere from about 75 to 80% of all of the water goes to agriculture. Some of that's in the upper basin, some of that's in the lower basin. In fact, the majority of it is in the lower basin, and the majority of it is actually in Southern California. Imperial Irrigation District, Coachella Valley, as well as Palo Verde Valley. Now, those areas are growing the winter fruits and vegetables that we all benefit from. If you just went and got strawberries or raspberries or lettuce from the grocery store recently, it very likely came from the Imperial Valley and was grown by Colorado River water. But a large share of that also is going to grow forage crops, alfalfa, hay, Sudan grass. You know, if you had cheese or yogurt, or if you had a steak recently, yeah, you probably benefited from that too. But also a good share of that alfalfa and hay gets exported to other countries in Asia and Saudi Arabia and China. In fact, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia actually operates farms not only in Southern California, but in Arizona. And they are using water rights and those water resources to grow alfalfa, and that gets exported back to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Why? It is illegal to grow alfalfa in Saudi Arabia because they recognize the water-intensive nature of that crop. But they have a dairy industry.
It takes a lot of water to grow.
It takes a lot of water to grow.
So they'd rather use our water to do it.
They'd rather use our water or other countries in order
Makes
to
sense
do
to
that.
me.
Yeah, they've mixed it up.
we
They've
allow
spread it out a little
and we
bit.
allow it to happen.
Well, some of that, you know, there's
That
some
makes sense,
challenges
too.
under the Commerce Clause and things like that of the Constitution. So yeah, but some of that is also getting looked at in a much more finite way, and needs to. It really does need to. And at the same time, massive investment in efficiencies in agriculture. We're not saying don't grow fruits and vegetables, right? We need to grow the fruits and vegetables. Let's make sure that if we're growing forage crops or even those fruits and vegetables, we're doing so in the most efficient manner possible. We're not flood irrigating. We're not wasting that water.
You would think the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and those Middle Eastern countries that's surrounded by water would, you know,
Right.
they make all these luxurious cities. You'd think they
On
put
desalinated
right.
water.
You'd think that they'll put more scientists involved in taking that ocean water and turning it into drinking water.
I don't disagree with you.
I mean, that's what I would do if I was king.
I don't, right? If you're
Because
king for a day.
you can't live without water. So here in Southern Nevada, a personal use, what's the percentage of that?
When we look here just in Southern Nevada, residential water use, which is what we would call personal water use, residential water use accounts for about 60% of our total water use throughout the valley. You talked a little bit about dust control and the fact that we see construction and dust control. That's less than 2%. That's less than 2%. And you know what? That's also protecting our air quality.
Right.
So
I know why they do it.
We get a little benefit from that. Hotels and casinos Oh my gosh, what about all these hotels and casinos? They're huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're supporting 40 million annual visitors. They have to be water gluttons, right?
Right.
Well, actually, casinos, just on total water use about 5% of our community's total water resources. Of that 5%, though, a large share of that is used indoors. We could turn on every faucet in every shower in every hotel room and throughout the Las Vegas Strip, and all of that water gets reclaimed and doesn't count against our allocation. So that 5% that the casinos and resorts use, they use less than 3%. They consume less than 3%. Okay. Because where they do consume that water is in their evaporative cooling. Mm-hmm. And that's why we've put a prohibition on any new evaporative cooling coming into this valley after September of this year. And it's got to be dry cooled or air cooled cooling rather than evaporative cooling that's water intensive.
Mr. Mack, do you have anything else that you want to mention that we haven't spoke about?
I think the one other thing that I would just say is water conservation continues to be our most important resource here. But water conservation in Southern Nevada doesn't happen by the other guy. It's not just your neighbor, right? It's not just that business down the street, but rather it is all of us community-wide working to conserve water. Feel free to use that water indoors, to cook, to bathe, do a little dance in the shower if you'd like to. It's going to increase your water bill, but it doesn't increase our water consumption unless you're on a septic system. So you got to make sure that you're on the municipal. Well, I don't
think I'm going to make it, though.
You have reliable water reuse yourself. I appreciate that. I can appreciate that. But conservation is a collective effort. And for all of us to continue to protect the investments that we have all made in Southern Nevada and the investments that we've made in our families and wanting to raise our kids here and hoping our kids can go and get gainful employment and have the same quality of life that we have, we must all be invested in water conservation. And we make it easy. Reduce your outdoor water use. Follow the watering restrictions, get rid of that grass, and report water waste when you see it.
So there's no drought here?
Well, there is a drought throughout the Colorado River Basin, but here we are the most arid city in the most arid state in the United States. We've been in a drought since Las Vegas was born.
So I shouldn't worry about the construction going on and the little white dot marks on the Lake Mead keep dropping and dropping and dropping. I shouldn't worry about that.
We definitely need to worry about it from the standpoint that we need to be conserving our resources here, and we also need to be advocating for policies that are going to help reduce demands throughout the entire Colorado River Basin. And, look, I'm not going to get into a conversation necessarily here about climate change, but our future is going to be warmer and it's going to be drier. And when it gets warmer and it gets drier, water supplies become more scarce. Our community has been preparing for 20 years for these water supplies to become more scarce. That's why we've invested the infrastructure. That's why we're invested in water conservation. And that's why we recycle all of our indoor water use. There is no other community on the Colorado River that is more water secure than what we have right here in Southern Nevada.
I want to thank you. We want to thank you for coming on the program. It's been very informative. Mark's going to zoom in on you and you can say whatever, save water, your point of contact or whatever. Don't worry, Nevada, we're going to be okay for the next 100 years. Whatever you want to say.
Well, Southern Nevada, when it comes to water resources and water conservation, it is all dependent upon you. We must all be doing what we can to save water, and the best ways that we can do that is save water outdoors. Follow the mandatory seasonal watering restrictions. Change your sprinkler clock 4 times a year, in summer, in fall, in winter, and in spring. And also, if you have grass at your property that you are not using, replace that grass with drip irrigated trees and shrubs. The Southern Nevada Water Authority will give you $3 a square foot to make that change and help offset that cost. And then when you see water waste or water flowing down the street, report that to your local water utility. Go to the Southern Nevada Water Authority website. For more information, visit us at snwa.com, where you can get all of the resources you need to stay water smart.
Now I see why they have you be the public outreach manager. You did a damn good job.
Thank you. And you guys had great questions. Great questions, and I really appreciated the dialogue and the conversation, even though I did most of the talking. So I appreciate it.
Well, you are the guest.
Yeah, we wanted to get the information out.
Well, please have me back anytime.
Thank you, Bronson Mack. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much, Jim. Folks, that's Bronson Mack. He is the Public Outreach Manager for Southern Nevada Water Authority. And this program was brought to you, sponsored by Ron Quince. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jones for Veterans in Politics. Until next time.